Of Europe during the scramble for Africa, it was instead easier. Rulers using modern borders for reference. In this alternate timeline, Europe never became the powerhouse it was. It was mostly Asian nations. So be using several civilizations. First will be using India. Nepal and Bhutan will be separate countries, and there'll be a separate Muslim majority Pakistani country that won't really do much. Also, there will still be the Ottoman Empire here as well that would control places like Egypt as well, and they would only lose that during the World Wars. So the Ottoman Empire will already exist in Egypt. Egypt will not be available to colonize in this timeline. So we have India. We have Siam. We have Vietnam. We have China, which will be using this blue color. We have Korea, which is green. And we have Japan, which is this brown color. Okay, we'll not be using brown for Japan. We'll be using this pink color. And Japan will already own Taiwan. What about Indonesia and Malaysia? Well, these places don't really have a lot of people. Well, they will not be a really big factor. The USA would also take over the Philippines before then, which means the Philippines will be owned by the United States of America, will be taken over by was already owned by Spain, and will be owned by the United States of America anyways. But in this timeline, they did not take over the Philippines, which means the Philippines remains a backwater in this world, alongside Indonesia and Malaysia as well. As Malaysia was a very sparsely populated country, same thing with Burma. Europe, in this timeline, it was mostly these four countries and partially Spain and Portugal. So in this world, we have the same amount of countries. India and China and Japan will be the biggest ones as well. Also, we're going to include some smaller colonizers, like Myanmar or Burma, and dark green for this place. This place is landlocked, so let's put it. These are going to be the countries that will not be participating whatsoever. So we'll be crossing out the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and Pakistan. As well as Pakistan is part of the Muslim world, and won't really. Pakistan will also participate. So we have India, Pakistan, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, or Khmer, Siam, Burma, Vietnam, China, or the Chinese dynasties, the Korean dynasty, and the Japanese dynasty. Okay, that Europe in this world is basically how it is. It's very weak. At this moment, they'll have the same rise that they do in the future. We also have the Ottoman Empire to contend with as well. Since Europe is weak, the Ottoman Empire also controls a lot of the Balkans still. But due to nationalism, the Ottoman Empire has been pushed out of the Balkans except for Greece and Bulgaria. They are the only two areas still controlled mostly by the Ottomans. Also, the Ottomans do control Kuwait as well, but there has been a border with Iran, which will not be called in. So, in 1886, the countries have agreed to make a peace deal in Africa. They decide to take over Africa. Before then, Thailand did colonize this Malayan area. Yeah, but this country was able to gain its independence. Now all eyes are set on the new, the very easy continent. Africa is not that far away from Asia, so not as near close as it is to Europe. For example, China's gonna have to go a long way to get over here. So this portion of Africa will be the harder portion, this portion of Africa will be the easier one. First will be the agreement of the Middle East. Pakistan will take these two Gulf states. India will take Yemen, and China will take over Oman in this world. Japan will also take over the Philippine Islands. As a part of the nationalist spur of Japan, they take over the Philippine Islands as well. First is the colonization of the New Guinea Islands. New Guinea Islands will be split. This will be the Indian portion. China will get this portion of the New Guinea Islands. Cambodia will get this couple of islands will be very, very interesting in the future, considering the fact that these islands may become their own country in the future. And Thailand will take over this area. The Indonesian archipelago will also be colonized by China. Partially by China. As these are the areas closest to home. The Netherlands in Europe did not start to realize that technology prowess has been copied by Asia. But Europe, however, has fell into a backward. Vietnam will take over all of these islands, including Java, which is the most populous island. And also there will be no East Timor in this world. Sumatra and the Malay kingdoms, along with Sri Lanka, will be independent. Sri Lanka will also be a part of India in this timeline. Now we're starting to the real colonization. India takes these areas. These areas will become majority Hindu areas as well. They'll also take these two countries here and will basically draw an island. Will basically take a colony around this lake here. Here. Burma, however, will take this colony. Actually, we're gonna do a the Arab state was created as well. And basically we're just drawing lines in the sand anyways. The Arab state gets this area. Yeah. As most of this area is uninhabited desert. Now the real colonization begins. The more Muslim majority area starts to get colonized by Pakistan. This coastal region is colonized because of the cultural familiarity with the region as well. As the Ottomans only controlled northern Egypt, this caused an agreement with the Ottomans and the Pakistan country, or whatever country this is called. This caused the agreement on the parallel area. Basically, we're drawing lines in the sand, they're drawing lines in the sand like the European did. But again, with the exception of the river, almost nobody lived here, so it was a net win. India starts to do what they did. India starts to take over this portion of the area. Expect the religion in this portion of the area to be very, very different than it is today. India takes over this entire coastline here, but will they keep it, is the question. China starts to establish a colony in this portion of Africa, in the southern portion of Africa. This is a very crucial colony as it is a very close to the coastal area. It is at the tip of Africa, which means it's a very important trade route. India was stopped by Burma, which they created a small coastal nation here, a coastal colony here, alongside with the government of Siam also taking land here. The Korean government didn't really do anything about colonization, but they decided to create a colony alongside Angola, and start to expand. Here, this Korean colony starts to expand into the Democratic Republic of the Congo as well. The Chinese also start to expand in this portion of Africa as well. And Cambodia starts to create its own colony. Since there's no, they start to create a colony in Eritrea, but they can't really get past the Ethiopian mountains and highlands. Since there's no pope to stop them, Christianity is not the main religion, of course, of Asia. There was a Vietnamese colony created in Namibia, in the coastal regions of the area. Japan, however, started to get their first colony. In Nigeria and Cameroon, a Japanese colony is set up. Meanwhile, Siam gets a small colony here. Pakistan continues to expand inward with the colony into Sudan and northern Eritrea. Many of these areas are already Muslim, so they're very easy to rule over, considering the fact that most of this area is already Islamic as well. Well, they also take the northern portion. They also split Egypt in half of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire also controls a lot of here, all the way up. They also control parts of Libya, but they did lose that land in the past. India, however, is trying to colonize this portion of Africa. The USA tells the countries in the Americas tell them not to colonize Liberia, which means India will separate Liberia as a state. Liberia will be the only state to not be colonized in Africa. The Arab state does colonize parts of northern Somalia, and northern Somalia becomes an Arabic-speaking country. Three. However, India stopped them in the tracks, but the Arabic majority is still going to be significant in this process. India will control parts of northern Somalia. It will control this island that's Yemeni. Meanwhile, the Thai kingdom continues to expand into what is Central Africa. Japan, however, sets up more colonies, mostly in Somalia. And they set up a small colony in the very unpopulated parts of Southern Africa. China's colony starts to, however, expand inward, which is a pretty big problem. And thus the scramble for Africa begins. India claims all of here as their territory, and takes it in the first part of the deal of the scramble for Africa. They also taken this inner territory as well here and want to stop China. Japan takes this whole area as well, which is parts of Botswana in Southern Africa as well. To the very sparsely populated parts of Southern Africa, China starts saying, of course, people there as well, which angers the native and starts several wars, in akin to the Boer Wars. The Thai kingdom takes over this area here alongside the small Burmese colony right here. Yeah. Meanwhile, the Khmer colony was established here. It takes over a lot of this area. Meanwhile, the Korean colony continues to expand. Oh wait, the Khmer already have a colony. The Khmer can't afford 2 colonies, essentially, and they're forced to give it to Japan. The Khmer are not happy about this, obviously, but they don't really have the funds to fund 2 separate colonies at once. The Japanese take over parts of Nigeria and here, but meanwhile the Khmer do expand into what is now Ethiopia. They do start to expand their colony into South Sudan, which is and parts of Sudan, which is a pretty interesting choice. And the border goes real with Ethiopia. None of these countries are able to take out Ethiopia. They are able to take out the lesser desired areas of Ethiopia with like the lesser population as well. China starts a massive expansion into inner Africa. As well as this part of Africa, creating 2 separate and distinct Chinese colonies as well. Considering that China had the second most wealth of any country in the world, but they are stopped by the small Korean colony and the Indian colony right here. The Thai don't really have many colonies in Africa. They do however take over this river here, and that's it. This colony right here expands a little bit, but I believe it's the Vietnamese colony. The Vietnamese colony isn't very well populated. They do, however, take a lot of this area here as well. And also they do take this coastal region of Africa. Unlike with Europe, Asia is much more stricter. And treats Africa kind of like the new area to here. There is a large-scale immigration to Africa from Asian nations, especially to the south, especially to coastal cities. These people, of course, work in the higher portion jobs. Now it's just Central Africa and Northern Africa, which is not on the table yet. The Chinese colonies meet and isolate the other colonies. Here. Burma's only colony cuts off the Indian colony as well. Meanwhile, the Chinese and Indians agree on this peace deal right here, where the Chinese get the southern portion and the Indians get the northern portion, creating some border war as well. The Indians basically take over a lot of this area right here and the rest of Kenya. Yeah. Cambodia takes this area. Meanwhile, the expansion into Central Africa continues, and Cambodia kind of halts its advance as China basically claims it all for itself. Taking a while the Chad area. Korea takes the rest of the Congo, making it one of the few Korean colonies in the world. This entire area is now taken over by China as well. Vietnam takes over this portion of Africa. Now it's the rest of the continent. Japan takes over Mauritania and the Western Sahara, which isn't really that impressive as these are some of the least populated areas in Africa. And they also take over a lot of this desert region, which again is very sparsely populated and is colonized by Japan, which means this part of Africa will be more ethnically Japanese. The Pakistan colony extends here, but they do take over a lot of northern Africa. The problem is they have to make a deal with the Ottoman Empire. Pakistan will get the desert portions, meanwhile the Ottomans will get the coastal portions as well. Morocco will stay as an independent country, very similar to Ethiopia. Yeah, and that is the alternate scramble for Africa. Got here. What would the colonies look like when they're independent? Very unlike the Europeans will be seen as nice compared to some of these countries. India and Pakistan are seen as the nicest of the colonizers, but the Southeast Asians, especially the East Asians, put aggressive settlement plans into these colonies as well. For example, in Central Africa, around 2 to 3 million Chinese immigrated from 1900 to 1930. In Somalia, around 700,000 Japanese immigrated in that same time. Same thing with this area here, around 900k Japanese immigrated here, making this place a Japanese majority as well. Tons of Koreans also immigrated here. But the problem happens in World War II. Japan starts to invade a lot of China as well, and World War II goes as expected. But instead, it's Japan versus China. No. Japan also invades the Chinese colonies. In Africa, the Japanese colonies are taken over by China. No. The Japanese colonies, besides Nigeria, are sparsely populated areas of the world and are taken out pretty easily. Meanwhile, the Nigerian colony continues to expand. Yeah. Japan, despite having way less manpower, it starts to lose a war and they realize they have way less manpower and the world turned against them. In the peace deal, Japanese lands are given to Ethiopia to expand their borders as well. And also the Western Sahara is given to Morocco. Parts of the Sahara is given to Morocco. Go. Which becomes one of the more prosperous nations in Africa. Now, what would happen when the nations gained their independence? The Ottoman Empire, of course, eventually does collapse and becomes the first to collapse of these empires. Yes, several nations were created in the aftermath of this country's collapse, including several Arabic states as well. These Arabic states basically, exist. Also, the European nationalities do gain their independence back from creating a Greek and a Bulgarian state as well. Pakistan gives independence to the colonies, and the colonies choose to unite, choose to create one united colony, post-colony. With the exception of Egypt, there's one massive landlocked desert country. As well. The Sahara, all the countries that will be released are kingdoms. Besides the USA making Japan more democratic, most of these countries are going to become kingdoms, more than likely. In the 1950s, a new border is set between the former Pakistani colonies as well. All of these countries also hold on. They are not independent nations just yet. Cambodia, due to human rights violations because the UN, is forced to give up its massive colony in Africa. However, there may be conflict in the future between the native majorities in the southern area and the more Khmer areas. In the future, these areas will become two separate countries. The Indian portion of Somalia and the Japanese portion of Somalia fuse into one whole country. A border is set with Ethiopia as well. Yeah. This Gambia River country also becomes independent as well. Well, Africa is on the road to decolonization. A South African state is created as well, alongside with several states over here, that are not Chinese majority states. As well. This portion of South Africa still retains relations very close to China. No. This Namib desert state also gains its independence as well, alongside South Africa. As well, gain its own independence. This is one of the few only other Japanese majority states in the world, and has one of the highest Japanese diasporas in the world. This colony of Thailand also gained its independence, which is one of the few colonies of Thailand in existence. The only Burmese colony in the world also gains its independence as Burma goes into a civil war. War around the 1950s. They cannot hold on to this colony anymore and gains its independence from almost peacefully as well. Madagascar also gains its independence as well. Yeah. The East African nation, which is a majority Hindu nation, votes successfully to gain its independence. It becomes one of the largest countries as well in Africa, as it never really broke into many small states. Yeah, and remains this way to today. It is one of the most nationally unified and richest countries in the continent. Also, this country here, which is basically Angola, gains independence as well. The former Vietnamese colony splits into two. Almost. It splits into two nations. A more Namib desert nation and a more Rus country. The Chinese colonies are unable to survive, and several nations are created, including a Mozambique nation, a landlocked nation, and a nation bordering the Korean Congo, which refers to itself also as Congo and causes a lot of confusion. Zambia also gains its independence as well. The Thai nation in Africa also gains its independence as well, as Thailand is unable to run its colonies efficiently. This leaves also the Japanese colonies of Africa are forced to gain independence because of the USA, which leaves Gabon independent, Cameroon an independent nation, and Nigeria an independent nation. Alongside New Japan as an independent nation. Despite the country really just being desert, New Japan is a strange country. It is mostly majority, because of the very low population of Mauritania and northern Mali, this area is mostly ethnic Japanese. But the nation mostly expels many of the ethnic Japanese from the nation to give themselves their own country. The last Vietnamese colony gains its independence as well and becomes several nations created, which is contrary to the last nation here. Now that the Korean, Chinese, and also Oman gains their independence, alongside the UAE and Qatar, and Yemen gains their independence as well, creating an independent state in Yemen. Also, Sri Lanka gains their independence and Kunda Island. These islands gained their independence, as well as the Cambodian islands as well. With also New Guinea is also split into Chinese New Guinea has not gained independence, but the Thai area does. The area is still majority Buddhist as well. Also, Japan had to relinquish its colony of the Philippines and gives the Philippines its independence. Despite this, Taiwan is so close to China, though to Japan, that it stays a part of Japan. Laos becomes an independent state as well. Laos still becomes an independent state as well, as a buffer state between Vietnam and Thailand, or otherwise known as Burma. Now, Korea, because of a civil war between the Democratic force and in the 60s, this area gains its independence alongside this small country here. A lot of the ethnic Korean people are allowed to stay, however. This massive Congo country is split in three. The rest of Chinese Africa gains its independence as well, creating several states up north that are often very, very poor. Poor due to being landlocked. The last Indian colony in the 1980s finally gained its independence, becoming one whole country. Considering the fact that the Indians focused a lot on national unity, and creating strong economies in Africa, the country is able to gain its independence after securing its economic stability. Sulawesi also gains its independence as well and becomes a separate kingdom. And Borneo gains its independence. The islands unite along with Malaya become one whole country. Meanwhile, the Philippines becomes a separate country. China in the 1990s relinquishes control of its colony. And India relinquishes control of northern Papua New Guinea as well. Was in 2008 vote to unite all three Guinea nations vote to unite into one country. So what happens to the Asian nations? Well, a separate Bangladeshi nation was created there due to the cultural differences of Bangladesh as well. China recognizes in this timeline the communists never take over China, and China does recognize Tibet, does allow Tibet to become an independent nation. Recognizing the area's historic significance. The demographics of Africa is mostly similar to today, except for this area, which is still 70% Chinese. This area is 47% Japanese, and there's still significant Asian minorities. For example, there's around a significant Indian portion in the former Indian colonies. A lot of the Asian continent either uses Hindi as a religion, Shinto in some of the former Japanese colonies, Chinese folk religions in many colonies as well, and Buddhism in a lot of areas. Buddhism becomes one of the largest religions alongside Hinduism as well. Yeah. The powerhouse of Africa is the East African nation. This nation is on the verge of becoming a superpower and has $1.1 trillion in GDP. Also having a population of 60 million, it is considered one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. The problem is, in modern day Asia experiences the very same ultra low birth rates as it does in our timeline. Even places like Vietnam, in the Philippines, and even Indonesia. It is a crisis that the Asian countries, alongside the African colonies, which are also hovering around this rate. More inner countries have higher birth rates, or even these countries are starting to fall. However, what happens to Europe? Well, Europe is very strange. The Holy Roman Empire still exists in Europe. Up. And we'll be just generalizing the actual borders of the Holy Roman Empire. Here. Italy is still split into several states, including the Papal States as well. Here, Catalonia and several Spanish states and a Muslim state in the southern parts of Spain still exists. There is a Russian Empire that controls a lot of modern-day Poland as well. Yeah. The contrary to what happened in real life is that Europe did never really industrialize the same way. It's finally starting to industrialize the same way Asia did. Which means places like America are third world countries in this timeline. And now Europe is starting to rise very similar to Asia as well. Especially Russia. Russia's economy is growing so fast that Chinese forecasters are saying that Europe may one day surpass Asia in economy. Europe's population is also growing very, very fast. And the forecasts are saying that the European economy, that Europe may become the most populated continents in the world, already with high population density as well. Well, which is contrary to the modern day world. There was a lot of immigration from Europe is deeply concerning to India and other countries, as Europeans, because they took so long to industrialize, unlike in our current timeline, European migrants, however, in many countries are highly sought after, simply because European migrants are considered intelligent and do a lot of things for the Asian societies. But also the birth rates do fall rapidly, like in Asian areas. Yes. The highest growth is expected seen in the Balkan areas as well, which in real life have the lowest birth rates in the world, in an inversion of the world. So what about the strange world? What do you think of it? Do you think it's weird as well here? Or do you think it's a pretty cool era? Well, that Asian countries became the superpowers of the world as well. Well, and Europe is not the center states as well. Well, in this world as well. Europe is still a primarily Christian continent. There is still a large portion of Muslims here. Hindus and Buddhists and Taoism and other religions are here. Also, Christianity is the fastest growing religion in Asia as well. Here. And religion never really died out. But secularism is becoming popular in Africa and Asia and South America. And this poses a significant threat to most countries, as well as that's mostly the reason for the very low birth rates as well. With Europe thus entering the industrial era and looking like 1800s Europe before Napoleon took everything over, Europe is just the beginning of its demographic transition as well, and entering the high growth era, which caused a lot of European immigrants to go around the world, just like how it is with Asian immigrants nowadays as well. The question is, what is the future of this strange world? Well, this world is kind of more peaceful in this world. There is no certain mustache man as well. There was no certain mustache man. Communism failed as well. There was a massive world war in the 1940s, and that was it. There was a original world war with Napoleon, but it's often considered the first world war, the war that destroyed Europe and put Europe back in time as well, since Napoleon basically Europe decided not to industrialize kind of like Rome did, making Asia industrialized in the 1900s. So what do you think of this timeline? Do you think that this is for the better or for the worst? What do you think?